everybody. Bob Ufer here in the chilly snake pit of Columbus, Ohio.
Elliott has the first down and more, and Elliott's going to have a touchdown.
Carl, watch out! Blake Carl, blazing speed. Can he get there? No, but he's down at the Ohio State 11.
Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Stroud in trouble, and Stroud is sacked again.
There's nothing quite like the game.
Michigan versus Ohio State, the game of the day, the game of the year, the game of the decade. Call it what you will.
This is The Rivalry, sponsored by Elevated Integrity Construction.
This is the Rivalry Podcast. Jace, JP, your garbage-free college football podcast focused only on the Ohio State-Michigan football rivalry. On Twitter at RivalPod, on Instagram at 1049 The River. And we'll get Wheel Route pulled up here. First, a big thanks to our sponsor, Elevated Integrity Construction, for sponsoring season 4 of the podcast. They do not only the construction, but the design element as well. Home build, church build. If you have a project, go with Integrity. It's Integrity, elevatedintegrity.com, elevatedintegrity.com. JP, spin that Wheel Route. Ham or turkey on Thanksgiving, my friend?
Are we going preference or what I actually
What
had?
did you actually have?
Neither. I had smoked brisket.
Honestly? Here for it.
Loved it. Little candied jalapenos on it.
Just like Mary and Joseph on that first Thanksgiving.
Smoked brisket.
It's delightful.
All right. Well, this feels like a personal attack. I hate this. This is going down. This is
Wheel
dying.
Route game to
Wheel
look
route,
forward to.
I don't want to hear it.
What game am I looking forward to? This week, I guess it would be the Big Ten Championship, if I was going off the top of my head.
The entire season, it has never landed on, I think, anything else than favorite player.
What
a time.
What time does your team play this week?
I hate every single part of that.
What game are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to Purdue beating the trash out of Michigan, which isn't going to happen, but now I'm heated. Now I'm mad.
USC Utah probably would have been a good choice.
I was completely fine and calm until that happened, and it has reignited me. So,
shall we just jump in?
I have a lot of things, to say about this. First off,
family-friendly show.
Ohio State fans make me furious for numerous reasons, and I'm sure that statement alone you agree with. But let me go off on some things that I heard walking out of the stadium, because I was there on Saturday.
Actually got to. I got to go. You got to
hated
be there.
and loved every single second of it at the same time. There were numerous things that I heard. I've seen on social media. I heard it walking out of the stadium. Atrocious. I'm going to nail all of these on the head right now.
Yeah, go for it.
OSU obviously loses the game 45-23. Don't be a scoreboard watcher. It was not as bad as that seems. 7 minutes left. OSU was down 8. They had a chance to go at it. There are things that have been said that both can be true. CJ Stroud is an all-time great OSU quarterback, but his legacy is going to be hurt because he didn't win these past 2 games against Michigan. Both of those are true. I would still say CJ Stroud deserves on the Mount Rushmore of Ohio State quarterbacks. And I know that right now is a controversial take. I have seen and heard walking out of the stadium a lot of people going, CJ is overrated.
Yep.
Let me tell you, my guy, I was there and watched that game. CJ Stroud had nothing to do with us losing that football game. Absolutely nothing. Shut your mouth. Stupid. Second thing that can be true. Ryan Day is a good football coach. Mm-hmm. His legacy is also going to be hurt because of these past 2 seasons. Still doesn't mean that he should be fired. Still doesn't mean anything other than you're going to look at him and you're going to go, but what did he do in those 2 games? And that is the gift and the curse of being an OSU fan and a fan of a program with such a rich tradition and a history like this. Michigan's the same way.
Gift and the curse
Alabama,
of being part of the
I would
rivalry.
say. Yeah. You could win every single game. You could lose every single game. That is the game that people care about.
Yep.
You could go undefeated. You could lose every single game. But if you win that one, it feels like a national championship. And that is the worst part and the best part of being a fan of this team is the expectations are so dramatically high at all times for this game. Both of those things are true, but I saw a lot of garbage saying CJ is overrated. Ryan Day needs to be fired. And while I think maybe the Ryan Day deserves a little bit of an argument, CJ thing, just get that crap out of here. It's stupid.
There's a lot of prisoner of the moment mentality there.
The other thing really hit my heart. Cade Stover is not a trash football player. And I heard a lot of people on social media this week saying that Cade Stover messed that game up for the Buckeyes. Again, my brother in Christ, did you watch that game? Cade does not play defense. Cade was not giving up a 69-yard touchdown pass, a 75-yard touchdown pass, a 45-yard touchdown pass, and a 75 and 85-yard touchdown run. Neither of those things were Cade Stover's fault. Both balls that people are referring to, the fourth down pass attempt by CJ to him, was a horrible throw by CJ. Yeah. It would have been an athletic catch for a tight end to make. Cade has been reliable all year. He's a John Mackey finalist for a reason. Dude's a baller. The potential touchdown at the very end of the game, heck of a play by a defensive player for Michigan. Unbelievable play.
His hand in there.
That is not a Cade Stover mistake whatsoever. That is a phenomenal defensive play by a Michigan defender. Those three things that I've heard all throughout social media this entire weekend made me more mad than the result of that game, because it's a bunch of garbage excuses for what the ultimate problem was. You brought in Jim Knowles specifically because of what happened in this game last year, and it was the same exact thing, but also almost worse for me, because I felt like toughness-wise, we were there. I feel like for the first half, there were a couple of key issues, and I guess this is where we can kind of dive into the game. Ohio State had numerous chances to step on the throat of Michigan, and they didn't.
Yeah. Yep.
There were 2 or 3 possessions in the first half where Ohio State had the chance to go up 10-plus points, and it would have been huge. If you would have told me before this game that Blake Corum was going to get two touches, I think Ohio State blows this team out. I would have said that.
Well,
and in full confidence.
I think that's what I said.
You would have even probably agreed with that.
Was without a healthy quorum, there was no path forward for this Michigan team.
And all I heard driving into the game that morning were all the Ohio State announcers saying that what was going to happen was Ohio State was going to have to force McCarthy to throw the ball, and he's been inaccurate. And he was. He only threw for like 50% of his passes, but also 3 of them were for a 69-yard touchdown pass, a 75-yard touchdown pass, and a 45-yard touchdown pass. Don't need to be accurate when you're throwing it with a defender not even 20 yards apart.
Ran for another one.
And ran for another one. So he did exactly what he needed to do. He wasn't super accurate, but it's hard to not be accurate when your receiver has 20 yards of separation from the nearest Ohio State safety. You bring in Jim Knowles specifically to fix the defense. All we heard all season long was this Ohio State defense. Jim Knowles has it together. And then you go in, and in the biggest game where he needed to show up, he allowed big play after big play after big play after big play after big play. Inexcusable to me. Those are the kind of plays that it directly goes back to the coaching.
Yep.
100% goes back to the coaching, because there were numerous times where the Ohio State defenders looked lost.
Yep.
The missed tackle on the first one to Johnson for 69 yards was poor tackling, but there wasn't a blown assignment. So it infuriates me, but I don't want to say make an excuse. It happens.
Yeah.
The other ones, inexcusable to me. Just absolutely poor coaching.
It's poor coaching, and the scheme.
Awful.
And we'll dive in this more in a second, but I'll just say for now, the scheme and the adjustments or lack thereof from the Buckeye side are just mind-boggling.
Yeah, crazy. And some of the decisions that they made that game as well. I mean, we had me and a guy in the press box are sitting up there, and Chip, however you say his name, because he's not touched the field the entire season, is now our running back getting 14-plus carries when you have Mayan Williams coming back, and you have a Dallin Hayden who just rushed for 146 yards.
I get Mayan being a little bit banged up, so I understand that, but I don't understand Hayden not being
there. Combined, I think they had 10 carries between the two, and Chip, I couldn't even tell you his name. Me and the guy in the press box looked over at each other, and we had to scour through ESPN to find what the dude's name was. He's a linebacker.
Yeah.
The guy's not even supposed to be on the field on offense. Yeah. And I felt like it was weird that we didn't get any answers from Ryan Day on either Dallin Hayden or Mayan Williams as to why they did not receive more carries. I feel like that was weird. And then the difference here for me was outside of the big plays, Ryan Day got completely outcoached.
Yeah.
He went in scared. There were numerous times where Ohio State was driving down the field. They had momentum kind of going. They would get stopped, and it would be a 4th and 2, a 4th and short. And we were completing passes and moving the ball, and CJ visibly wanted to stay out there, and Ryan Day just said no, and he punted the ball away. And it wasn't them super backed up. I'm talking we're at the 50-yard line. Michigan's 40-something.
So here's an interesting piece of that particular call that I think has to be thrown in there. And obviously, I'm pleased with the result here. Okay, there's no shock.
What?
I know that particular play, because I think it was 24-20 Michigan at that point.
Yeah,
something like that. 24-20. The ball's around midfield. It's 4th and 3, 4th and 4.
It's 4th and 2.
So yeah, CJ wants to stay out there. Ryan sends the punt team on. If I'm remembering the right play, and I'm pretty sure it's that one, that was supposed to be a fake.
Yeah, and you can tell if you watch the film, you see Ibuka break out and go to the left for a pass.
Well, and I don't know if it was supposed to be. I think the snap was supposed to go to Mitch Rossi.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was going to run it. He had space for that, or if he was thrown to
I think
Ibuka.
it was an option.
But regardless, Michigan. So here's the amazing thing. I kind of dove into this thing when I started seeing stuff about it from the Michigan beat and the Ohio State beat. Michigan had the personnel out there to stop the fake punt. They had Harbaugh said after, we got lucky. They had us cold. They had the personnel out there to stop the fake punt. Ohio State had the personnel out there to go for the fake punt. Michigan somehow failed to cover for the fake punt. So it was there. And then the center failed to snap the ball
to the right guy.
Rossi. And I don't know if somewhere in there in the false start, if he was confused if it was still on or what, but there's an encapsulation. So you could take that two ways, right? You could take that as, man, if we had snapped the ball right to the guy, he's open and changes the game. Sure. You could also take that as an encapsulation of the poor coaching, poor execution, just lack of
discipline, which I think you saw later on in the game
from Ohio State on that play.
Yeah, I think you saw that later on in the game as well. I don't remember the situation, but it was a huge game-changing play where Ohio State had a crazy pass down the sideline, and at the very end, G. Scott headbutts a Michigan defender well after the play, after a huge gain, which then makes it, there was a holding call before, so instead of a 1st and 20, 1st and 15, whatever, it's now 1st and 35, and Ohio State couldn't climb out of that hole. And there was no reason.
Without that hold, now the hold is what created the play because Michigan was coming. Yeah. But the ball was at the 25-yard line at the end of that play regardless. So sure, it's 1st and 20. You can overcome that. What in the world is he doing?
Awful. And to me, and there was another one, and I love Cade Stover. There was another one at the end of the game that he got called for.
On the punt.
And you know what I didn't see? Michigan players doing that. And while I love the fight and I love the intensity when stuff like that happens in the right moment, undisciplined and stupid.
And that comes back. That's going to come back to coaching, right? Like
100%.
It's one of those things where, when Scott headbutts a guy and Ryan is clearly frustrated and yells, "Get him out of there." It's like, well, yeah, he's doing the right thing, but that is a culture issue. And I know Buckeye fans can come at me for that. That's fine. That is a culture issue. Here's where I think, and we can get into some of the nuts and bolts here. Here's where I think it is on the mental side. And I can say this as someone who, I'm 30. Okay.
I'm a man.
I'm 30. My adult memories of this game are all negative. 2003. I don't remember 2003. Okay. I was 11. I don't remember that. I remember Chris Perry being on the team. I think I went to my first Michigan game that year, something like that. I don't remember beating Ohio State in 2003. I remember 2011, and that was it up until last year. So I know what it feels like, at least on the fan side, and I know that Harbaugh felt this pressure. I know that Michigan teams felt this pressure of, we've got it, especially after 2016, with how close they were. We've got to get it done. We've got to get it done. We've got to get it done. And you saw what that pressure did as Ohio State blew out Michigan again and again, and Michigan got close but couldn't quite get it done. This flipped that back on Ryan Day. Last year, Michigan finally got it done. And I think Ryan Day, I heard a number of Ohio State beat reporters say this. Ryan Day seemed to take to heart Josh Gaddis, former offensive coordinator, saying, this is a finesse team. They're not a tough team. And the general sentiment in Ohio State land has been that ate at Ryan Day. He wanted to prove we're a tough team. Brian Hartline in the Skull session was talking about we waited 365 days for da-da-da. I get. You're riled up. You're doing all that stuff. But when push comes to shove, it was a worse performance. And so now you're looking at it going, okay, did Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes feel the pressure? I think yes. And when things weren't going their way, you started to see them break with personal foul penalties like that. And frankly, at the end of the game, all credit to Donovan Edwards and that offensive line for the two big rushes. Ohio State also looked like they quit.
Yeah.
And they looked like that last year too at the end of the game, where they still were in it. And Hassan Haskins hurdled a fool and made him pay for it. They looked like they quit. So now if you're Ohio State, you're looking ahead to next year in Ann Arbor already. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, and again, you don't want to be prisoner of the moment, but you have to go, okay, no CJ Stroud. What's that going to look like? That's a whole question for the offseason. Is there anything right now that tells me that next year is going to be any better going up to Ann Arbor? The answer for the Ohio State side would be no. That's just even more pressure with a Michigan team returning a ton of veterans. So it's an interesting mental game. And I've been on the other side of that as a fan. How do you get out of it? You win football games. There's no other answer. There's no other answer but to win football games. Here's the fascinating piece of this game. I mean, there's so many things you could talk about.
Yeah.
The fascinating piece of this game to me is the tale of the halves. I mean, Michigan could not move the football. We had one rushing yard at the half?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
One rushing yard at the half. And I both don't know what changed and I do. JJ McCarthy decided that he had to take the game into his own hands, and he did it. And finally, as Jim Knowles makes the adjustments to try to get somebody who can cover and stop after the third long touchdown pass, that opens up the run game. And I think the drive for me that really solidified that Michigan had got them where they want them, so to speak, didn't put the game away.
Yeah.
But was the drive that put Michigan up 31-20 it would have been early fourth quarter by the time it ended. An 8-minute, I wrote it down, 15 plays, 81 yards, 7 minutes, 51 seconds. That's an 8-minute drive that drives the length of the field.
Kills an entire quarter.
And puts a touchdown on the board. That right there, that is what the rest of the stuff led up to. The missed tackle on Johnson. Okay, it happens. I don't know who Martinez was trying to cover. Cornelius Johnson made him look like a fool. And then Colston Loveland, same thing. Lathan Ransom, my goodness, how many times did that guy get burned in that game? So you make the adjustments, but it's already too late. And at this point, and I texted you at the half and you said, hey, what's it going to take to win for this game?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't see Michigan finding a run game. I was wrong. But I did say, if they're going to, it's going to have to be JJ McCarthy using his legs a little bit more to keep him honest. And sure enough, JJ McCarthy's passing ability and his ability to run forced Jim Knowles to make adjustments he didn't want to make because he had no other choice, and opened up the run game for Michigan to go on those long sustained drives.
See, and I would agree with some of the things that you said. I do think this season they did take a step forward as far as toughness goes. The defense, in my opinion, outside of those big plays, which were drastic, did perform better at stopping the run in the first half. I was impressed with that. The two long runs at the end, I'm with you. I think mentally they just gave up. You still, obviously, Edwards finished with 200-something rushing yards because of those. I thought the first half, the main issue was that, and it was a weird game, and I think you would even agree with this. Of if you would have told me that Quorum wasn't going to play except for 2 snaps, if you told me that Ohio State and Michigan at the end of the day would be equal in time of possession, and if you would have read me some of the receiver stats, like I think Harrison and Anabuka both had over 100-something yards. I'm sitting there going, Ohio State won this by 17 plus
and
points.
Hey, Michigan's going to have 1 rushing yard at the half.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you'd have brought all these things, it was like everything that we had talked about leading up to this game that needed to happen happened, but it just didn't make a difference. I think last week even I said on the podcast that Michigan couldn't have a bad first half against a good team like Ohio State. And in my opinion, Michigan did have a bad first half because Ohio State held them to 1 rushing yard, I think is what it was. They had I think 2 big touchdowns that were those long plays to Cornelius Johnson, but Ohio State just didn't do what we needed them to do, which was when you get a stop on defense, you've got to go and capitalize. Yep. And there were 2 or 3 chances at the very first half of that game that I think could have changed momentum for this game.
It easily could have been, it's 10-3 when Johnson gets loose the first time. And that easily could have been 17-3. That first half could have ended about 27-10.
Yeah.
And been a completely different ballgame.
And I think if Ohio State could have capitalized once or twice on those and got even 10 points out of it, I think that changes the game going into it. But because Michigan went into the half only down 3, they didn't have to, they could keep their same game plan offensively. Defensively, they just had to figure things out. And like you said, they went down, they did a typical Michigan thing, 8-minute drive, 15 plays, took up the entirety of the third quarter and retook the lead. And it was just from then on.
That's the sort of thing the game plan for a fully healthy Michigan, that's the game plan. I am still a little bit in shock, to be honest with you, that they weren't able to do that in the first half, and they were able to adjust so well. Yeah, because it's got to be that balance, right? Where it can't just be. I will grant that on the first Johnson touchdown, I thought McCarthy just kind of threw it up there, and I thought that there was a little bit of luck involved. The second time, it ain't lucky. The third time, it ain't lucky. No. And that's the sort of thing where I go, okay, I had to kind of mentally shift for me because I'm such a negative football fan. That it wasn't just, Michigan's really lucky to be in this game. They were lucky to still be in it in one sense. They also earned that thing. And I agree with you. Ohio State had the ball, I think, at least 4 different times inside the 35 that came away with, they had the ball down there more than that. But I'm saying there were at least 4 drives inside the 35 that I think garnered 3 points, 6 points, something like that.
Because of penalties and whatever else.
It's outside the red zone, but it's still that same kind of lingering red zone issue, plus field position that you didn't do what you needed to do with it to put Michigan out of it early, or to at least make it more difficult for Michigan. I want to give kudos, though, also to Michigan's defense. Here's the drive. Ohio State went up 20-17. That beautiful pass to Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, amazing catch.
Which, when that happened, I go, oh, okay. It's gonna. I thought we were turning the time. Okay, it's gonna be like that. That would be the last touchdown they'd score. The final 7 drives for Ohio State after they went up 20-17, not counting the end of the half drive. Punt, 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 field goal, pick. Mm-hmm. That's a heck of a job by Michigan's defense.
Yeah, which they've done all season.
28-3, Michigan outscores Ohio State in the second half. 7 drives, 4 punts, 2 picks, 1 field goal. That's just not good stuff from Ohio State's offense. And again, I had said Michigan's not going to keep you from scoring points. It's got to be bend, don't break. Bend, don't break. So they gave up 480, 490 yards of offense. I think Michigan had 520, somewhere in that range. Yeah. So both teams gave up about 500-ish yards of offense, but you gave up 3 points in the second half. I continue to be impressed both last year and this year, and I won't belabor the point here, but both last year and this year, Ohio State's coming in with just phenomenal wide receivers, phenomenal quarterback play. I mean, Olave, Wilson, Smith and Jigba. This year it's Marvin Harrison. 3 passing touchdowns in those 2 games. With some combination of those guys on the field. That's incredibly impressive to me, and because that was a big question mark for me coming into this game was, how tested is the secondary? We're giving a lot of soft coverage to teams like Illinois. We're going to get torched if that happens, and bend, don't break. Yeah. Michigan did a really good job there.
I think some of that, because Ibuka and Marvin Harrison still had 120 plus yards each. Yeah. I think the penalties killed a lot of stuff like that. I think the one point that really sticks out to me is the mindset for both teams. When Michigan, in my mind, when Michigan saw we're only down 3 points after the bad first half that we just played where we rushed for 1 yard, we're only down 3 points to this team. We can take them. We're on the other side of things. Ohio State, who had numerous chances and didn't capitalize on it, lost a little bit of the confidence because they go, dang, we had this chance, and this chance, and we just couldn't pull it out. And I think that's why Michigan came out in the second half with a better mentality. And Ohio State came out and they were kind of sluggish because you saw that lack of confidence that they weren't able to get things done in the first half when they should have.
Confidence is a really important word there because we've talked about this a little bit with some of the discipline thing, but Michigan on that first drive of the second half goes for it. I mean, there's so many
their
little
own
things right, that
territory.
get lost in a game like this because I'm pacing around my in-laws' living room.
I had my eyes closed, so I don't even know.
But it's fourth. It's a. Well, I mean, 20
like
to 17.
4th and 1.
So it's a 3-point game here. It's 13 minutes to go in the third quarter. It's early, and it's 4th and 1 on their own 35, 40-yard line. And Harbaugh says, "Yeah, let's go." Are you kidding me? If you don't get that,
Stones.
you're in big trouble.
Stones.
You're in big trouble. And Michigan went for it. And that ended up being the Colston Loveland touchdown.
Yeah.
Few punts traded back and forth. And then Michigan goes on that 8-minute touchdown drive. That's the type of stuff. Wow, calling I don't even know. Kalel Mullings is a player I have never heard of. I've never heard of this man in my life. And here he is, throwing the football on 3rd and 1, Tim Tebow shot put style, the ugliest throw I have ever seen in my entire life, and completes it to Schoonmaker on a 3rd and short. That what type of call is that? A good one, a really good one.
When it works.
So I don't remember which Michigan beat. This may have been MGO blog, so I apologize if I get the source wrong here. But someone had asked Mullings about that play and said, "Hey, tell us what happened." And he said, "Yeah, I couldn't see Luke." He didn't see Schoonmaker. And they said, "Well, what did you do?" He said, "I just threw it to the area." So this dude, who I've never heard of, on a critical point in the game, gets called for a halfback pass, jumps up and just kind of lobs the football in the general vicinity of a tight end.
Confidence.
And it works. And it's confidence. Here's where I'm going to get in trouble with Buckeye fans. I've tried to be very charitable. I don't think I'm going to say anything that you haven't, that you're going to be upset with, because I think you said it. I'm thinking of people like our good pal Bill, who's going to listen to this podcast
On his
and
walk with Thor.
yell in the dark at his dog, not at his dog, but with his dog. You get it. Figure it out. The big optimal word here for Ohio State coming into this game after last year, that's fueled them for 365 days or whatever it was, is soft. This was a soft team. We saw it in the body language. We saw it in the personal fouls. We saw it in the team that quit. Here's even where, if I'm a Buckeye fan, I don't know if you saw this or not, but this would bother me to no end. Carmen, Ohio is a tried and true Ohio State tradition. I hate it, which means I'm sure you love it. It's a great thing. I understand that as you're swaying back and forth and singing, that the team is going to be really, really in a bad place. I get it. Kudos to them for sticking with the tradition. That's cool. The song is not over. It ends with the OHIO, okay? Mm-hmm. It's not over. And Ryan Day starts walking off kind of haphazardly, like doing the OHIO.
Does the hand signal,
with about as much enthusiasm as a 3-year-old in a church play. What in the world is that?
See, I don't have a problem with that at all.
No. That is softness at its core. That is a culture issue. Stay and do your dang tradition. I don't know what in the world he's doing, walking off half-heartedly trying to go through the motions here. And then he's going to have the audacity to go into the press conference, be asked about, hey, should you be a playoff team? And he goes, yeah, I think if we get a shot at the top 4, we're a pretty dangerous team. My guy, you just got a shot at the top 4 and you lost by 22 at home. What in the world is going on there?
I don't know if I agree with that. I get what you're getting at. I understand what you're getting at. I've heard a lot of Ohio State fans say the exact same thing. I think it goes back to the pressure that I talked about at the very beginning. When you play and coach for Ohio State or a Michigan team or an Alabama or a team that's a storied program and the pressure, I think he knows after he lost that game the second year in a row, he knew he was going to get a lot of crap for it. And it was a tough game. And I think in his mind, he knew they were right there. There's a few things that if they could have fixed it, if they could have executed a little better, things would have went their way. And I get in the heat of the moment, not wanting to stand out there and sing a song, whether it's a tradition or not. And I think it's easy to say for you as a Michigan guy after coming off a victory to say, no, stand out there and sing the song. But after a crushing loss like that, 2 years in a row, where you're then going to have to go sit in front of a bunch of reporters and answer questions about why is this team not performing well? And what are you going to do as a head coach? And you're taking the sole blame. And I think you're signing up for it. So I'm not using that as a scapegoat.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if I would say
for that.
I don't know if I would say the team is soft as much as I would say, and there have been games that they have been soft, and I've called them out for it on Twitter.
At Rival Pod,
as all people do. I wouldn't say that this game showed them as soft. I would say undisciplined. This was different than being soft to me. And I wouldn't even say a lot of the defense, because I think the defensive line played fine. I think linebackers played great. To me, it was a complete secondary issue that played soft, and I think the undisciplined penalties impacted. I don't think that makes them a soft team. I think
you're wrong. You know that?
I don't think I am. And I don't disagree with him necessarily saying that we're a playoff team. I would have had a problem with if he came out and straight up said, I think we can still win a championship, because I don't necessarily think as it stands right now, we have it in us to do that. I hope that we do. I hope we can correct it. I think we have the talent. I do think that if you look at the top 4 teams, I think Ohio State deserves to be in there.
Get out.
100%.
Get out. Over who? Tell me which team you would throw out right now, because you're going to be ranked at 5.
I think Ohio State would.
We're recording this before the rankings come out, by the way. So if I'm wrong, I'm not an idiot for that reason.
In the coaches poll, they're number 5.
So let's assume that you're 5. Which of those top 4 teams would you throw out right now? Tell me who you're better than.
I think we are better. I think given another chance, we could compete better against Michigan. I am not solely convinced that Michigan is that drastically better of a team.
22 points, my guy. At
Get
home.
that scoreboard watching
At
crap
home.
out of here. Get it out of here.
I watched the game.
It was an 8-point game.
It was not.
With 7 minutes to go.
Oh, no.
And I think there's a chance. TCU, I think, would get mopped by Ohio State.
But do you deserve more than them?
If we each have one loss, and our loss is to a playoff team and their loss is to a Kansas State team ranked 12 or 14.
One loss is different. One loss is different. I'm saying as it stands right now, presuming
if
that
they
you're
stay
5,
undefeated, no.
That's what I'm saying.
No.
Would you go over a USC Pac-12 champion?
To me, that's a loaded question, because I still think even if TCU goes undefeated, Ohio State would beat them 9 times out of 10. But I also agree that if they go undefeated, they deserve it. So yes and no. I think if they go undefeated, they deserve to get in because they did what they needed to do. But if you're telling me at the end of the season, Michigan and Georgia are the only undefeated teams, you're telling me there are 2 other teams with 1 loss that are better than Ohio State, I'm not buying it. TCU would get destroyed. USC could put up a good game, but I'm not super convinced that they're a better team. So who are you putting in that has 1 loss?
I think that's a different scenario then. I think if we're talking about, hey, all the other teams have 1 loss now, that's a different question. I would be with you there.
Right now, who's undefeated? Georgia, Michigan, and TCU. So you're fighting for that 4th seed.
And right now it's USC.
Yeah, which
I think again, we're recording in the future or in the past. I don't know.
We're recording it at a time that is not the time that you're seeing this. In the future. I would still say we're better than USC.
Man.
I
No,
would. I truthfully think. I truthfully think if Ohio State played USC that we would beat them. They lost to Utah.
I'm gonna wait for our producer to switch cameras there.
They lost to Utah by 1. Utah's not that good of a team. They are not that good of a team. And then they beat Notre Dame, who, yes, Ohio State also beat. Who else have they played? UCLA?
I am not going to sit here and argue with you that Ohio State is better right now than USC.
They are better right now.
So here's where this leads to, right? It's going to lead to some really interesting game watching this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
For all parties involved, because I'll float you this, okay? This is a very antagonistic episode of the podcast, and I'm here for it because we beat you by 22 without Blake.
You say all the time, don't be a scoreboard watcher. You're scoreboard watching.
I watched the game, and I watched you guys get torched without our Heisman candidate. My goodness. Can you imagine Michigan by 1,000? Here's where the interest comes in. Georgia's a lock. Even if they lost to LSU this week, Georgia would be a lock. Michigan, even losing to Purdue this week, would be a lock.
I would maybe counteract that first point.
Okay.
Let's get a little crazy. Why not? Why not? If Georgia loses to LSU, look at Georgia's schedule. Tell me who they've beaten that impresses you.
Georgia is going to, even if Georgia lost to LSU, LSU is just the number 5 team in the country.
Let me just pull up there. But then they lost. They have 3 losses.
Listen, I'm not an LSU guy. No one in the country, including LSU, believed that LSU was number 5, but that's what the committee thought. Georgia at 12-1 is an absolute lock for the playoff. Michigan at 12-1 is an absolute lock for the playoff.
Let me read the schedule that Georgia played. Sam, which is, I'm assuming, Sam Houston. They played them. That's a tough game, huh? Then we got South Carolina, who until recently was not that good. Kent State, ooh, scary. Missouri, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Florida. They beat Tennessee. I'll give them credit there. That's a tough game. Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Georgia Tech. Only 2 of those teams are ranked. Oregon, who they blew out at the beginning, that was an impressive win.
Yeah, we kind of skipped over that one, didn't we?
They beat Missouri by 4. They beat Kentucky by 10. None of those teams scare me outside of the Tennessee and Oregon. Those are the only 2 ranked teams.
Listen.
They have played nobody. If they lose to LSU, why is that so out of the question?
An Ohio State team that struggled with Northwestern and Maryland and got blown out by Michigan at home does not have any room to talk about other teams struggling.
Look, I'm just saying, I'm not sure that they're a lock. I'm not sure they're a lock.
Okay.
If they lose, I don't think they're gonna, but if they lose, they've not played anybody.
Producer Eric, would you call a medic? Someone's having a stroke. Georgia's in. Michigan's in.
I would agree.
Here's where you're looking. Here's where you're looking if you're an Ohio State fan. Now, does Ohio State deserve to go? Absolutely not.
Of course you think that because you're scared. I would be too.
Listen, the whole the whole Ohio State beat, not a single person that I have heard talk about this game or write about this game thinks Ohio State deserves this. Now, if they get in, of course you're going to cheer for them, but they don't deserve it. Here's what you're watching. You're watching TCU and Kansas State. Even a TCU loss, I don't think guarantee. I think you probably get in.
Oh, I think for sure.
I don't think it's a guarantee.
They're going to put TCU with 1 loss in over?
Well, not necessarily over. I think the main one that you've got to watch is USC and Utah on Friday night. A USC loss de facto guarantees Ohio State gets in. Because then it doesn't matter what TCU does. A USC loss would give them 2 losses and not a conference championship. Ohio State with 1 loss, Ohio State's in. TCU is kind of tricky because would you take it's 11-1 versus a 12-1 team. The committee says they value wins. Do you punish someone for having more wins and playing in a conference championship? I don't know. I think USC is the big one to watch. If USC wins, boy, it gets really tricky for Ohio State at that point. No, and again, a lot of this depends too on whatever the playoff rankings were on Tuesday. We're recording this Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, that's assuming Ohio State gets ranked 5, which will most likely. I would expect.
And again, you'll know because you're in the future, but Ohio State getting ranked behind Bama for some reason, which would be, I'll say it, would be gross. Alabama has 2 losses. There's an argument there. I'm not going to defend it because I hate Alabama. So whatever.
Something we can all get behind.
So that would matter, but that's the big one to watch on Friday night. USC, Utah may very well determine Ohio State getting in. And I'll say this. This is what I was going to say because it's been a bit of an antagonistic podcast, which is great. I do not want to see Ohio State again. And it's not even necessarily the fear of losing to them again. It is like, do I think Michigan would beat them again? I do. But the emotional drainage of that game again a month from now, no, thank you. No,
I want to see it. I want to see it because I want
to. Of course you want to see it. Your season's done if you don't.
It's not done. We still got a bowl game, the Rose Bowl, which we'll probably play UCLA or somebody. I want to see it because I want to see how this team responds because we just got done talking at length about their mental toughness and you were calling them soft. After a tough loss like that, if they get in, I want to see how they respond to that. Do they come out and kind of sulk and let teams run all over them, or do they let that loss ignite them and they come out with some intensity?
I think we know the answer to that.
I'm not sure.
Because here's the thing.
Would love to find out.
It comes back to the pressure situation that I was talking about with Ryan Day and Ohio State feeling like they were under so much pressure and we started to see them break. The reality is that let's say USC gets beat by Utah. Real possibility.
Yeah, both of those are tough games. I mean, right now USC's number 4, Utah's 12. They lost to Utah earlier, 43-42. TCU and Kansas State
There's a clear path. I'm not saying it will happen, but there's a clear path for Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, unless, and again, you'll know because you're watching in the future, unless Michigan gets ranked at number 1 on Tuesday night, which I don't think will happen, and I don't want to happen because that would set up that rematch. Likelihood is if Ohio State gets in, you've got to go play Georgia. And I just don't see a scenario where Ohio State comes off of a loss like this. It feels like they're going to try and squeeze too hard. It feels like they would squeeze too hard. They'd be tight. They try to force it. They try to go out and have to prove themselves. And that tends to be when you make mistakes. I don't think they'd have much of a shot against Georgia.
All I'm saying is if that happened and somehow Ohio State and Michigan made it to the national championship game, I would have to quit this podcast because I don't think that we could do this.
I think we could.
I don't think.
Here's the deal. That would give Blake Corum 6 weeks to nurse up that knee. Did I mention that we beat you without him?
I'm not scared of him.
So
I say that to convince myself.
No, you did. Last week, I think you said Blake Corum is the only member of Michigan's offense I'm scared of. And yikes.
Still true. Honestly, still true.
Are you doing okay? Do you want some water?
I watched the game on Saturday, and I'm a Rutgers fan.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to talk about Rutgers.
I literally just put still dead. So
yeah, I put Rutgers in a frowny face, and that was my analysis. So that was fun. Michigan State.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord for Michigan State. I don't know if you are familiar with...
What did they sign their coach
Mel
to?
Tucker, I don't know if you've heard, is signed to a 10-year, $95 million contract.
What was their record? They were ranked in the top 25.
5-7.
And you need how many to make a bowl?
Not 5.
Dang. Sad.
Real disappointing. Other teams that are bowl eligible include Eastern Michigan, UAB,
my favorite Michigan team,
South Alabama, and UConn. So I think there's like 5 MAC schools that actually made a bowl this year, which is exciting. But not Michigan State. Tuck coming to the couch with a bowl of chips to watch Michigan in the playoff. Man, it's great to be Michigan Wolverine.
You know what? This whole podcast, that just brightens my day. I don't need anything else.
Upset pick of the week. I've got North Carolina over Clemson. Like
this is one that
it would be easy. It's championship week, right?
Yeah.
It'd be easy to say, "Oh, I'm going to take Kansas State. I'm going to take Utah." For the heck of it, I'll take North Carolina. Clemson doesn't have anything
Purdue
to play
over
for.
Michigan. I'm just kidding. I don't actually think that. I have Kansas State over TCU. This is what I hate is I want to really strongly believe that Utah is going to beat USC for a second time. Because I desperately want the Horned Frogs to make it.
Yeah.
Because I just love that small school. So I want them to go undefeated and get it. But I know that they're the least.
Me too. I want Michigan. I would rather Michigan play TCU than USC right away.
Look, but I just know that that's the most likely upset between those games. So I've got to go Kansas State over TCU.
Yeah. It'll be worth watching. Obviously, big implications for Ohio State. I'm going to take 5 seconds and preview Michigan Purdue. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
We still got to give a prediction.
Oh, yeah. I know nothing about Purdue this year.
Didn't even look them up.
I know Mockabee is their freshman running back, and he's pretty darn good. I know Aiden O'Connell has put up some nice numbers.
Sure. Those are guys.
Those sound like real football names. Mockabee definitely.
Want to throw out another one? I wouldn't know.
Your dentist's name is Crentis. Yeah, so Purdue is here's the thing I want to be clear on is this is genuinely I am not disrespecting this Purdue football team. This is 8-4. This is not the Northwestern at 6-6 coming into Ohio State.
Yeah, they're 8-4.
Like they're not great, but they're good. They're a good team. Do they deserve to win the Big Ten West? No. Illinois blew it. Illinois had a chance. Illinois is the best team in the Big Ten West by far. But Purdue won 8 games, which is more than Michigan State did. And they've got some guys who can play ball. Can they hang with Michigan for 60 minutes?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Nope.
Now, here's where I'll say, here's an interesting thing to watch, is Michigan's first half struggles to run the football. What does that look like? What does the run game look like against Purdue in this game? Because Blake Corum is highly, I would assume, Corum is highly unlikely to play in that game, especially because if you are an almost guaranteed lock, even if you lose. You're not going to put guys in there. You're going to try and go win the game. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if Blake's not 100%, you're probably not putting him in
you
there.
don't need him with Edwards back there.
That would be my thought. And that's not a disrespectful comment to Purdue. That's the reality of
Edwards is very serviceable.
That's the reality of you're going to go play more football after this, almost for certain. Do not jeopardize your whole season for this game that means a lot, but is not the end goal. That's going to be the key. I don't think Purdue can hang with Michigan. I think Purdue will probably surprise a lot of Michigan fans because I think a lot of fans are just casually going, hey, yeah, Big Ten West is trash. We're going to win the whole thing. You might win, but I would not be surprised to see Purdue put up a few points on Michigan. I think 42-20. I think this game
we are close.
I think, well, it's 22 points, which is not really all that close, as you might be familiar with from this past weekend.
It is my prediction. I'm going to ignore that hate. The prediction, Michigan 45-17.
Yeah. So Purdue just a little bit worse than Ohio State. You heard it here first.
Stop it.
No, I think that's fair. I think Michigan's a good team. I expect it to be a lot of what we saw from Michigan this whole year, which is a close game at the half, and Michigan is just going to grind you into stone at the end of the day.
I think it'll be a repeat of last Big Ten championship where they just from the start dismantle like what they did to Iowa. It is just going to be a bloodbath early, and then it'll slow down because all they'll have to do is run the clock out. I don't know much about Purdue because why pay attention to the Big Ten West?
Here's a scenario that I'm just going to float out. Jim, I assume, watches this podcast. I assume JJ McCarthy's watching this on the plane ride at some point. Do you fly to Indy? You probably drive, right? From Ann Arbor?
A team like Michigan probably flies.
Probably do. Wine and cheese on board.
Yeah.
That's just kind of our vibe because we're better. Here's a thought. Michigan's going to the playoff anyway, in every scenario imaginable.
Yeah.
What if Michigan loses this game? I'm not saying you throw the
literally
game.
won't happen. I can't even have that thought.
I'm not saying they should do this, okay? That would be very unsportsmanlike. But I'm just saying you could lose this game, and Purdue, as the Big Ten champion, goes to the Rose Bowl. And Ohio State takes a hit to their resume and ends up in like the Gasparilla Bowl or something. I love
that you think that way.
I'm just saying
it ain't happening.
It's a scenario that I wouldn't hate
what would
to
be
see.
Hilarious is that happens and then Ohio State gets into the playoffs over Michigan for whatever reason. And then you miss the playoffs, but Ohio State gets in. That won't happen either. But if we're throwing out fantasies, then I'm going to throw that out there as well.
Your prediction for Michigan and Purdue this weekend on Twitter at RivalPod or on Instagram at 1049 The River. You don't have to give a prediction for Ohio State.
I hate everything.
You don't play this week. Enjoy the games.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter at RivalPod for live tweets, score predictions, contests, and more. And make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now for new episodes every Wednesday. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.